remember that 98 season well, kind of what John was going through that national championship game? What was that like for you watching him?
Well, of course, I was I was holding the camera. I mean, I was a camera guy shooting, and so I was on the field. But I kept thinking while I was shooting, what are these? I cannot wait to hear the calls in this game because I knew they were going to be legendary. And I got a chance to be in the locker room when he interviewed Coach Fulmer for the last radio show. And I thought, how did I get here? How is a knucklehead from West Knoxville here watching these unbelievable titans of this sport? And so, and again, he was prepared and a professional to the very end. No tears. I think he got a little quivery at the end of his broadcast, but there were no, it was always the consummate pro.
Like, how much would that happen where people that were involved in the game would go back to listen to his calls?
All the time. I mean, all the time. You had discussions and meetings about it on Monday. You were like, let's review the calls. And for us, it was Sunday morning. And we would tie a lot of his broadcast to our coaches' shows and things of that nature. And, how do you pare down so many special calls that he made over the years? And they were legendary. They were iconic. And national broadcasters all over recognized that. It was just the way John's father ran. It was at Tennessee School of the Deaf. That was how he grew up, and so he was a very effective communicator and knew how to paint a word picture for anyone, and that's what he did. He just painted a picture that you could see it in your head. My first, well, it's not my first memory of John, but I remember the 1982 Alabama game. I didn't have tickets. I was in my house at West Knoxville. I set a radio up in my backyard, and I threw myself footballs trying to act out that game as an 11-year-old kid. And I remember how legendary those calls were at the time. It was just incredible. And so I'm just one story of literally tens of thousands of people who were affected by the way he called the games. And because TV wasn't the thing, you guys know this better than anybody, he had to do it for us to understand the game. We can go back to our archives at Tennessee, and you can see in the 70s and 80s how many fans are wearing headphones to listen to his call while they're watching the game at Neyland Stadium. Just an incredible compliment and tribute. And I did tell these folks, I said that one of the strongest things that everyone should know about John Ward, that has affected really all of us, even some of us that don't even know it, is the legacy he's left in the broadcast community. Because throughout this, the folks that you guys work with at all the radio stations and television stations and websites, John Ward set that standard. And that's why Knoxville is a special place and a very unique place in media, because John set the standard, and if you didn't live up to it, you were moving on. If you did live up to it, you just passed it on to whoever else. So that standard was set by John of excellence, and it was unrelenting, but yet you had an affinity for him because he was just a beautiful soul.
You mentioned the national perspective and how other people nationally understood what he meant to broadcasting. It's got to be pretty special to see so many people, late in his life, recognize what he did, and then also just reflect on his time and how they impacted even them.
Well, it makes me, when I see all these titans of broadcasting, honor him. The Charles Davises, Reese Davis did it last season. You sit there and think, how did a knucklehead like me get to be in his circle? It's inexplicable when all of these folks that do the job that you guys do revered him. Mm-hmm. And of course, mine was on the TV side, and I could have never called a game and put two sentences together ever. So the eloquence of what that discipline is just always been so impressive to me. But the standard, we've moved on to the SEC network, and we're a partner with them. And of course, many of y'all have helped us on those broadcasts. Well, that high standard set by John Ward, because there just was only one standard, and it was a very, very high.
You mentioned that you can go back and look at old photos and there's fans in the stands wearing headphones. It seemed like an obvious question, but why do you think that was? I mean, they're at the game. Why do you think that was that they did that?
Well, the Vol Network, when they built the statewide network, and it was really kind of region-wide because it touched in parts of Alabama and touched in parts of Kentucky, that's how people got the games. And, Coach Fulmer tells a story of having to drive up to some high point in his county just to hear the call, right? And in Winchester, Tennessee. And so back then, you hear a voice, you know it's special, and so you don't want to miss it. When you're in the stand, you did not want to miss what John had to offer and what he added to the game. And I will say this, John loved the Tennessee fan, probably more than anybody, and it affected all of us greatly. Our appreciation for the Tennessee fan is carried forward because of him. We've never taken it for granted. And if you ever heard him speak publicly, and it was never a line, it was always from the bottom of his heart, he thanked the Tennessee fan. There was a connection there that few schools have probably also enjoyed, but it's rare.
You might have been asked this.
Oh, I'm sorry. Yes, I'm so sorry. You guys are
No, it's all right. It's absolutely fine. Should have brought the stick.
Nope, it's all good. Thanks.
Thank you.
So UT grad, huh?
Yeah, we're together.
So you know.
Yeah, absolutely.
Good to see you.
You might have been asked this already, but just what was he like, the personality away from the booth?
John was an extremely warm person. He had a small circle of folks that were around him. He was very humorous, very, very funny. If he gave you a nickname, you were in the club. And he called me Ink. My name's Link, but he called me Ink. Where's Ink? You know, and I did a lot of work with him through natural gas and what he did through that, building the pipeline throughout the state of Tennessee. But he was a funny guy and had great lines. The lines that the calls that he made, he had so many more that were just in everyday conversation. And we quote him with the Vol Network guys, and it's just a Titan has passed, and he will be sorely missed by so many.
In any the way that things are.